Yes, thank
Hello.
you.
Ah, there we are. We've got Shy. Well done. Hello, Shy.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us.
Brilliant. So we're just sort of having a little general chat while we're waiting for the remaining people to join us, Shy. So you're going to read to Friedlander to us. Just looking at your books behind you.
Oh, yeah. Oh. I have a photo library of about 400 books.
Wow.
Yeah, from every single genre of photography. It's my pride and joy. Yeah, I don't have children, so I have books.
I have books.
I don't have pets, I have books.
Well, we have books, Shy, and we just ignore the children. Or is it them ignoring us? Probably that tragedy.
Wondered the Freelander's not cheap.
No.
The older ones.
It's quite funny actually, because I got some of them for an absolute bargain. I scoured the internet and there were some books that were probably worth a couple of hundred, and I probably picked them for like 50 quid, because people sometimes don't realise what they're giving away, especially in charity shops. Seriously, they don't realise value of what they're giving away.
I'll be seeing you on Antiques Roadshow then.
Oh yes, absolutely. You'll see. They'll be selling me soon. I'm sure.
But they're fascinating things, aren't they? Photography books. When you go back 20 or 30 years and see what people were working on then.
Yeah.
Not dissimilar to today, really.
And you know, the rhetoric might change, but the photographs themselves will never change. And you know, it really makes you realise and analyse that they've documented something that was a snapshot of that moment in time, and something very much of that zeitgeist. That you know, and you just think, wow, this is what photography does, and we're continuing to do that through our jobs and through our interest in photography.
For those just joining us, we're just having a general chit chat at the moment, so you haven't missed anything. We haven't actually started. Any other big photo book collectors in the group here? Anybody beat 400?
401.
Well, actually, I think he might not want to admit to it, but we've got Steve Taylor in the group. I think you've probably added a naught onto the end of that.
I got nearly 3,000.
Have you really?
Yeah.
I'm actually in awe of you. I really am. That's amazing. How long did it take you to collect all that?
Probably about 20 years.
Oh, right. Okay.
I sell books as well, so it's...
Do you?
Yeah.
What's your website called?
Yeah, what's the website called?
I'll send you a link later.
Okay, excellent.
But no, Steve has got a tremendous collection. I've seen it, and there's a lot of signed books. And
oh, wow. First editions as well?
Yeah.
Oh, you're so lucky.
Well, I think the harder you work, the more luck you get, don't you? I think that's the way it goes. Is that it, Steve? Where you were stood outside book signings and...
Yeah, I also sat at the... what is it?
Photo London or
no. Tate at the Tate Modern when Robert Frank had his exhibition there a few years ago. I was working down the road, so I sat there every lunchtime for 3 weeks. And the guy who ran the gallery said, "What are you doing?" "I'm waiting for Robert Frank. I want him to sign a book." "No, he doesn't sign books." I said, "I know, but yeah, sign mine." and I waited, and in the end, all the curators knew me. And then the top guy came in one day, he said, "Come tomorrow, 5 o'clock, and he'll be here." Because they kept saying, "He's not going to come, he's not going to come." And I said, "Look, Robert Frank's not going to let you exhibit his prints if he doesn't give you the okay first." So I sat there for a fortnight, and then sure enough, he turned up on the day and signed my book.
Well, you weren't going to let him in otherwise, were you, Steve?
No. I'm still in front of the door. So.
The phone's just on top of there. I've tried to plug it into iTunes, but it won't play. Maybe you're going to have to phone Apple's.
We're pretty much getting there now, and we'll make a start in a few moments. People the last couple of seconds to come in. Listening to the domestics.
They can play some you if you want.
Yeah. Fantastic, isn't it? So let's just have a look at the numbers. Brilliant. Okay, so what we're going to do today, everybody, is maybe a little bit more casual than normal. We're going to kind of have a conversation. So I think if we kind of make a start, so welcome, Shy. You've already arrived.
Thank
Hello,
you.
but if you can say hello to everybody now, please. And
Hi everyone, I'm Shy. Nice to meet you all.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let me. What I'm going to do is just mute everybody now, and then hopefully remember to unmute Shy and myself so that you can hear us. But then that will there we go. If anybody does want to ask a question during the session, please do feel welcome to unmute yourself and just ask the question. Just kind of interrupt. We'll see how that goes. But I'm just going to mute everybody. And then Shy, where are you? There we go. Yeah, can we hear you, Shy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear
Excellent.
you. If you're on screen, if you just wave to say that you can hear Shy, that's fantastic.
I can hear me.
Yeah, because it's I'm doing a technical bit and I'm useless at it, so let's hope we get it. So what I'm going to do, Shy, is just share my screen, and then we can just talk through what we're going to be doing today. So let me unclick that now. So hopefully what you're seeing now is the introduction screen. So Shy, what we're going to do is we're going to start off by discussing how East Midlands got to know Shy from the art world, really. So there was a series of different dates. East Midlands did a project at Park Hill in Sheffield, where a dozen of us went along and photographed Park Hill streets in the sky in Sheffield and produced a book which we then, or a couple of us, then took to the art trail in near Bradford in Saitaire. And you'll see as we go through the presentation, that's where Shy first of all walked along and picked up the book and had a look at it. We then saw Shy's photographs, and you'll see some images of those. And then Shy actually came over to Grimsby and did a recording which went out on her radio show that she was doing at the time, where we were curating an exhibition of the work of Brian McCarthy, who many of you will know.
Sorry, Stuart, but we can't hear you. We can't see your screen.
Can you not see the screen?
No, and you're not seeing the chat messages coming up either.
We've just got your desktop with the Windows 10 icon.
Okay, so let me just stop the share for a moment, and we'll just share that screen. So can you see the starting screen now, John?
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you. Excellent. So could you hear what I was saying though, John? Just a thumbs up. You're muted. Fantastic. So we'll then move on to where I went over and met Shy at her home and interviewed her there. And then, of course, she came over to East Midlands and gave a great talk with I forget who your number two was. We'll come on to that in a while. So let's just move through to the first slide. So this is Saitaire. So I don't know if any of you have ever been over there. When we are allowed out again, I'm sure they'll organise another art trail. They do quite a few over there. Saitaire, of course, is it was a whole little housing estate built for the workers of a local factory. Marvellous place. And Robert Heronshaw and myself went over and we showed some of the work that the region had done at the Park Hill Streets in the Sky, as mentioned. We actually spoke to about 6,000 people that weekend. It really is a busy, busy weekend. And at some point, this lady walked up, picked up the book and started laughing. The book was making us so happy. What did you think of the book when you first saw it, Shy?
I thought it was the first time I'd seen anything like that before. I've seen compilation of work and retrospectives from one photographer, but not from a mixture of photographers about one particular topic. So I was quite intrigued by it. And obviously you went to Sheffield for that, didn't you? You shot it in Sheffield, didn't you?
We did. It started off with a really silly remark, actually, and my background is similar to yours. It's professional photography. And of course, we have to meet deadlines. And somebody said to me, it's okay for you, Stuart, you have to meet deadlines, but we don't, because we can't. We're amateur photographers. And I thought, well, that's crazy. Catching a bus is a deadline. Everybody meets deadlines. So it started off as an exercise to see if people would get the photographs sent in on time, as per an editorial photographer would need to do. And everybody did, but actually it merged into something else. As you say, it was 12 different photographers who all photographed Park Hill on the same day, but in whatever way they wanted. So what you got was a real mix of images, all different, or projects. It went really popular, and in fact, we've just been back to do the 5-year update. So it's 5 years ago we did that project. Time flies. So while you were there, of course, Robert likes his lunch at a particular time, so he started waving the spoon around, and we went over to a cafe, and I think that's where we met you again. And we saw this marvellous work on the wall. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that work, Shy?
Yeah. So this was 4 years ago now, so it's 2016. And I, from 2015, I started volunteering in this particular cafe. And what the cafe was part of an umbrella project. It was called the Real Junk Food Project. It still exists, but in a different guise now. But at the time, it was basically a network of pay-as-you-feel cafes. So what the cafe workers would do, or the owners would do, is they would go and intercept food that was either waste food, so it was headed for a landfill, or it was surplus, or it reached its sell-by date of just of a couple of days and it was going to be thrown out. So what they would do is go to the supermarkets, go to various local businesses, they would intercept food, and then they would cook it. And then, because obviously it was free, the food was free, it was donated, they would then encourage the clients, the customers, to come and pay whatever they felt it was worth. So I remember when I started volunteering at this particular cafe, thinking, wow, this is so much bigger than us at the moment. And I remember at the time there was the whole thing with the refugee crisis going on throughout Europe and probably worldwide. And it really made me think about food poverty and food waste. You know, why do we waste so much food? And yet people, not just refugees, but people that are born here that, you know, still don't have enough food to eat. And I had worked as a commercial photographer up to that point. And when I was working at this particular cafe, I learned that there were other cafes in the network nationwide. And I thought to myself, you know, I've never done anything like this. I've never had an exhibition. I've never documented anything like this, but this is actually really important. And it's actually quite important to me. So I spoke to the founder, who was a chap called Adam Smith, and he was based in Armley, which was a flagship cafe. It's not there anymore, unfortunately, sadly, they've closed it down. But I went and spoke to him and said, look, you know, I'd love to document the cafes in your network and have an exhibition on the back of it. And he gave me his blessing. So in 2015, I went on the first part of a tour of the UK, and I went as far up to Edinburgh, as far down to Brighton, and I documented a day or half a day of the cafe and cafe workers and the clients at work. I did it again in 2016, and what you see on the pictures there is a culmination of part of the exhibition. And it was launched in the Saitaire canteen because they had quite a large upstairs area. So it was launched all on the upstairs and all on the corridors and everything like that, which is what Stuart and Robert saw on the day. And what I did was I used the acronyms PAYF, which is pay as you feel, and broke them into different words. I also used the Real Junk Food Project. So for example, the Y from PAYF there, as you can see, is youth. And I did that, and then I split them into different themes because I captured that many pictures. I think I must have captured over 2,000 pictures in my trips, and then sort of chose the best ones that exemplified that particular word.
I think that's really interesting, Shy. So this is where you're taking the images, but actually moving away from just the photograph and making a lot more out of it, making a story out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to say, I was in my 30s at the time. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd worked as a commercial photographer. Prior to that, I had a background in event planning and finance. You know, so that was, and I just there was something in me that was almost visceral, and I thought this is really actually quite important. I'm lucky. I live in quite an affluent area, but a lot of people don't, and you know, it is just me, so I can make sacrifices. Meeting people on the journey and speaking to people where they only have £5 to spend a week and they've got a family of 4 to feed, you know, and not including themselves, that was heartbreaking, and it really opened my eyes.
It was a fascinating cafe. I mean, the food was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and there was this sort of it was the first time I'd come across something like that. So you kind of then wondered, well, how much should I pay for it? But it wasn't about paying for it, was it? It was more than that. You then wanted to support these people that the project was about.
Absolutely. I mean, the project itself, when it started off in its inception, was very much a grassroots model. And the reason that a lot of the cafes have closed down now, I mean, it does exist in its own guise, the Real Junk Food Project, is it just, things become more corporate. So I just feel very lucky that I captured it at a time when it was very much its early stages, and all these people were doing it for reasons that inspired them from their heart and from their mind, as opposed to thinking about how much money we were going to make. I mean, also, you know, I don't blame them. At the end of the day, you can't live on air, can you? So a lot of people giving up their time and their skills and getting no money, but other things that are more valuable than money, obviously. But they couldn't do that forever. And myself, I mean, I didn't get paid to do this. I spent a year working with the Real Junk Food Project and other pay-as-you-feel cafes, and you know, I thought, well, actually, what's more important? I do have some money, I have savings, I have a job, I do have commercial work, so actually, I am able to do this, and this is actually very important to me right now at this very moment in time. So that's what you're seeing in the back there.
Do you think the photography raised the profile of the cafes?
Yes, absolutely. I think it did. I did. I mean, I know that some people came specifically to see the exhibition. The Saitaire canteen doesn't exist now. It's changed to another cafe. It's called Nordish. So the chap that was serving the food at this particular one, he's very inspired by Scandinavia and all things Scandinavian. So it's completely different from the Real Junk Food Project. But I spoke to him recently. I popped in to get a cinnamon bun like you do, and I said, "Oh, do you remember what it was like when the exhibition was here?" And he said, "Oh, you know, people used to," he goes, "Did I ever tell you about the chap that came from Peru to see the exhibition?" I went, "You're joking." He goes, "Well, he didn't come just for the exhibition. He came to see family and friends, but he heard about it, and he was in Leeds visiting family, so he came all the way here to see your exhibition. And some of the prints were up for sale, so they just sort of administered it. He bought a couple of prints and took them back to Peru." But yeah, no, I do. I think it made a massive difference.
And how did it change your approach to photography? How did it take you from the commercial photographer to what you then became?
So I'm probably better known now for being a socially engaged photographer. It was the first time of any kind that I'd done anything that was non-commercial related. It gave me the confidence to do the work that I wanted to do. And I was in a position where I was fortunate because I didn't have children. I could do that. So if there were any sacrifices to be made fiscally, I was making them. So, you know, I just think that all the stars were aligned at the right time. And also it just made me think, you know, as much as I love doing the event stuff and doing the weddings and things like that, and I have fantastic clients, it wasn't enough at that point. You know, there were already ideas for things that I wanted to do. I just didn't have any idea how to approach it. And then sometimes you just got to throw yourself in the deep end and say, do you know what, I'm doing it. I'm just going to do it. I don't know if it's going to be good, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Fantastic. That's an interesting comment, actually, throwing yourself in the deep end. I'll come back to that in a while. I just want to go back to you at college. You did study photography, didn't you? And how did that go at the time?
So yeah, this is interesting. I lived in Italy for a while, and I came back, and in Italy somebody gave me a camera. It was a Leica M3, and unfortunately I didn't understand the value of it, so I broke it. I'm so sorry, I did.
Well, just fallen over.
Yeah, well, it tripped, yeah. And when I came back, I remember thinking, you know, I don't want to just leave this. Actually, I'm really interested in this. So I started doing the degree. I think I was like 24, 25 at the time. And when I started doing it, the first year was an absolute shambles because, to be honest with you, my head wasn't in the right place. My focus wasn't there. And I think it came down to a lack of confidence, but at the time I don't think I wanted to admit that. I thought, no, it's not me. It's obviously it's the equipment or it's something else. But then what happened is when it was coming to my second year, throughout the whole summer, this is when I started collating books, and this is when I started speaking to people that were in the industry, and also going to galleries and museums for exhibitions. I thought, you know what? How dare I do that? How dare I mock this craft? This is really important. And it's made a massive difference to so many people's lives. And when I went back to second year, I was a lot more subdued, I was told by my tutor. and I focused, and that's what happened. And in the second year, it was almost a breeze. I was there literally from 9 in the morning until 9 o'clock at the night, because that's what time they would close the lab and the library. And I was there every single day, from Monday to Friday, except on the weekend I worked in a call centre for finance industry for a bank, so that's how I earned my money. But I thought, no, I'm not going to mess about now. This is actually too important. And when I graduated in 2015, I thought I could just leave it, because a lot of my peers at the time did, but I thought, no, actually, I don't want to leave it. So I took a 75% pay cut. And I started freelancing at the time, and I did jobs for pennies, but it was fine. I was learning. I'm sure I took some really bad pictures as well along the way. And then I just started to get better. I got better equipment, and then in 2009 I started working for a studio franchise. I became one of the photographers, and then I was promoted to be the what do they call it, like a studio trainer. So they have a particular set of number of studios in the north, for example, so I would go and train the other photographers there. And then on the back of that, because I made them so much money, I thought, this is ridiculous, I should be making this money for myself. So I set up my own studio in Shipley, which is next to Saitaire, and then I had that for just over 2 years. And then I worked part-time for community organisation, and then I was introduced to the Real Jump Through project in 2015.
Fantastic. Let's move on to, oops, on the wrong screen. Let's move on to the next. So this is where your interest, throwing yourself in at the deep end, really struck a note, because of course Brian McCarthy doesn't do anything by half measures. And this was the exhibition at the Grimsby Institute. It was while I was studying there. I think you graduated in 2005, was it?
2005, yeah.
2005, yeah. So this would have been around about 2016. And once we'd set the work up, I thought about giving you a call to see if you, or I think you were actually asking me to come over to Bradford, weren't you?
Yeah, at some point. I know you were busy at the time. I think I mentioned the fact that I had this radio station.
Radio station, yeah. And I thought, well, rather than me come to you, why don't you come to me and sort of record live at this exhibition? And there's Brian. He's not intimidated by many people, and I'm sure you weren't really intimidating him, but how did you find the exhibition and the experience of going over there and interviewing people?
I'd say I was bowled over by the actual content. To say that they were from students and from, local people, I was thinking, well, why am I not more aware of this? That was one thing I remember thinking. Why is this not in the Guardian? Why is it not in, the Telegraph? I found the people perfectly amiable, and just to give some context behind the radio show, so it's not my radio station. It was a radio show that I was doing called Snapshot with Shy, where I would speak to them for about an hour, and they were mainly sort of people photographers that were up and coming or fairly established in their local areas respectively, but not known nationwide. And I wanted to sort of highlight their work and bring them to the forefront. So I'd go out and do interviews, or they would come to me, and then it would go out live on BCB radio, and that's where so this is me, you know, with my phone, recording the audios from students, and from there were some lecturers as well that I'm pretty sure I spoke. Yeah, there's a lecturer there. Yes, I spoke to lecturers.
Yeah, I mean that's he's the curriculum manager for the FE. So Grimsby Institute is quite interesting. It's got a strong FE body, but also a university centre as well. So you're seeing students from right across the board, and also tutors, of course. What did you think to the responses from the students? How were they engaging with photography, would you say?
I think it varied, to be honest with you, depending on people's experience, depending on people's interests, to be honest with you. I mean, you can imagine if you're young, I mean, I didn't know what I was wanting to do until my late 20s, mid-20s. You know, some kids at that age were doing a course because their parents might have asked them to do a course, or because they didn't know what they wanted to do. So, and you know, a couple of them that I spoke to said that we probably won't do this when we finish. This will be the end of it for us. But it was interesting speaking to yourself. Obviously, I knew you anyway, but when I spoke to you afterwards and we did an interview afterwards, you explained how long you'd been in the industry for. And I remember thinking to myself, isn't it strange how someone with so much interest and so much experience is working alongside people that you know, probably are just doing it to pass the time at that point. And I remember thinking, I wonder how you felt having to work with students that weren't of the same caliber of you at that point.
I think probably people, as you say, come from different backgrounds, don't they, and different expectations. What I think it's well worth looking at doing a degree at whatever age you are. I think I mean, for me, it started off just by a comment that a customer made. You've probably heard of the butterfly effect, where from small things a lot more can happen. And I'd shot this particular person's portraits in August, and she said to me, but you can't come and deliver them until September. And I wondered why, and that was because she was waiting for a student finance to come through. And I got talking to her about studying and the concept of studying, nothing to do with photography. And I immediately went and signed up both her and my wife. And my wife is in a different room in the house at the moment, just finishing her PGCE. And there's at least 2 or 3 people in the audience today who have got to a point where they may be thinking about what do I do next. And I then said, do a degree. And they are. So it's just from small things, isn't it? And I just find the whole thing quite fascinating.
Yeah, I often remark, because I've worked and I have guest lectured at various universities over the last few years, that the mature students have such a different approach as opposed to younger people. I mean, whatever approach, as long as you're there, for me, it's great, it's wonderful. But certainly speaking to some of the mature students, they're doing it. They don't have to do it. They're doing it because they want to do it. Whereas, and I'm not saying that all the younger generation, if you're 18, 19, sometimes you do know what you want to do with your life, but a lot of the time you don't. And there was almost this expectation to say, well, if it doesn't work out, we can go and do something else. You know, we're still young. Whereas with some of the more mature students, are like, well, we're here, we're spending a lot of money, we're spending £10,000 a year to do this course. So actually, it has to work. This is our second chance, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's what I remarked. But yeah, the work was really great, though.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you. So let's move on. Oh, by the way, the radio broadcast that you produced from here is still available, and I'll send that link out to everybody. Your other podcasts, do you know if they're still available?
Oh, I don't know if they are actually. I can check. I don't think they will be now.
If they are, let us know, and I'll let everybody have the links if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, in fact, that is the title of the broadcast that is on YouTube. So I will send you the link, but you can always do a search for it. So we then invited you to come over to Watton, and you spoke to a packed hall, and it was a fascinating talk. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Can you remember much about it? You've done quite a few since then.
Yeah. So I was delighted to be invited by the Royal Photographic Society and I was talking about the Real Junk Food project, and I gave a more comprehensive overview of the images and the experiences that I had, and I also shared details about future projects that were coming up as well, that I know we'll touch upon in a minute. But yeah, no, it was fantastic. I mean, I had sort of lectured before, but speaking to people that were there because they were so enthusiastic about photography was fascinating, and it was really nice to hear Brian's talk as well. Oh, have I given that away?
I can't remember. So, who was the character I got along to come and talk with you?
Brian Griffin.
Brian Griffin. If anybody in the audience don't know who Brian Griffin is, he's quite a famous photographer. He was at Manchester Polytechnic with Martin Parr and Daniel Meadows and Charlie Meacham and Peter Griffin. So how did you feel about talking alongside somebody who prior to Watton, I was watching him on social media fly from Australia to China to Paris, thinking, when is he going to land at Watton and has he forgotten us? How did you feel about being billed with somebody like Brian?
So to be honest with you, I didn't know who he was.
Fantastic.
I'm just going to say that now. I didn't know who he was, and then you sort of shared the information, and then I went and did some research, and then I was like, oh, actually, this guy's a very big deal. And then when he shared his work with everybody in the group, I was like, wow, actually, you know, this guy's travelled, and his work's quite conceptual, isn't it? It's more conceptual portraiture.
Yeah.
And actually, he's probably in a small way helped me steer my own path towards the work that I do now, which I'll be sharing in a moment. I remember I actually bought a few of the books from his collection that he brought that night, and I went and studied them. And bearing in mind, he shot a lot of it in analog. Oh yes, there we are. A lot of it in analog because he shot a lot of it in the 70s and 80s and 90s. But his lighting was so spot on. And his composition was so much. I remember thinking, you know, I could learn from people like him, and he's still alive. He's always a bonus.
Very much so, yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, this is something I write about, and I refer to it as an entwined network of creative artists, because there is yourself not knowing who Brian Griffin is, and there's no reason why you should. But in the audience, we can see they're members of the region, but are also members of camera clubs. So I understand you've spoken at Melton Mowbray Camera Club quite often since. Are there any other camera clubs who have invited you along?
There are in Lincolnshire. I've got and there are several here in West Yorkshire. Whether it'll happen this year now, I don't know. But yeah.
And this aspect of it, I really like how we're kind of all coming together. So from that small wandering up to Park Hill Book at Saitaire to getting to know all these different people is what it's all about, I think.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I have to thank you for that.
No problem at all. No, thank you. So, and neither of us can really remember why we got together at your flat for an interview. We can't remember what we spoke about. I will find the recording. But this is where you were basing your business at the time, which is fascinating. We walked along your entrance hall. It was really great to see your images on the wall and your big sign there. And this was where I first saw your collection of photo books, which I found very fascinating because of the eclectic authors. You were looking at all different aspects of photography. Is that something you still do now?
Absolutely, yeah. Certainly during the winter months, which is what I call my period of hibernation, I will, the way that I've compiled my library is I've started from the earliest photographers, from say Nadar or, you know, onwards up to the contemporary photographers, and I literally will work my way through all the books. Some I'll skip because I've looked at them several times and I'll think, well, actually, this isn't relevant to my next project, or I already know the work so well. But yeah, 100%. And the other thing is you always learn something new. You look at an image that you've looked at 100 times and there's always still something in there that evokes a different emotion from what it did before. So, I mean, I'm in it for the long haul. And also, you know, I class myself now as a socially engaged, probably more of a studio portrait photographer now, but that doesn't mean that I don't revere and respect, and I'm not influenced by other genres. I absolutely am.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I know we spoke recently, and I gave you an example about when I went and tried to start a street photography project, and it didn't work out very well because I couldn't focus. I couldn't find something to focus on, even though I knew what the topic was. And I remember thinking, actually, I feel like I'm out of my depth. And because I had a big camera, I had the D800, the Nikon D800, maybe I was more conspicuous. So maybe that's something I could go and try again with a smaller camera. But I just remember thinking, I don't feel comfortable in this zone. Whereas if you put me in a studio with lights, in my, especially certainly my own space, you know, I'll create some magic for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do. I absolutely, even landscape, you know, there's personification in landscapes, personification in architecture, things like that.
Well, it was fascinating listening to Joe Cornish the other night, and of course he's a big landscape photographer, very, very well known, and he was talking about the human condition in the landscape and how light is life. And as I was listening to him, I was thinking there were so many aspects that resonated with me as a documentary photographer. So even though I can't bring myself to go out and do landscape photography at 4 o'clock in the morning, as everybody does, to get that beautiful light, there are aspects of his talk and his genre that I can now use in my photography.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, photography is photography, and whatever you're doing to promote that craft is fantastic in my book. But also, it's like, you know, I look at paintings from the 16th century, and I'm drawn by aspects of the lighting that are imbued there, because you think, oh, actually somebody from 400 years ago has drawn upon their knowledge and the skills of composition and their own painting, different shades of painting, to create that particular effect. So I can do that. It's easier for me to do that with all the lighting and the equipment and the skill that I have and the knowledge about technology. So it's absolutely relevant and pertinent to all different kinds of photography, different genres. So it's quite important to build an oeuvre, I think, that is more rounded and not just always focus on one thing. So this is why, you know, you'll see from the following work that you'll see in a minute, it's completely different from the Real Junk Food project. Because that's just where I am at the moment. That's where my head is. Oh yeah. You know, guys, I don't live here anymore. I don't live in this particular flat anymore. So looking back is, you know, I haven't seen a lot of these particular pictures. So this is some of the commercial work that I used to do with weddings, mixed with all the other books that I had. And it's you know, to me, to look back and think about where I was when I knew Stewart. Was this 2017 or
This was March 2017.
So yeah, 3 years ago, and where I am now, and the process and the evolution it's taken for me to get to where I am. It's, you know, it makes me reminisce quite poignantly, actually.
And then the reason why I took this photograph was because I noticed the Vivian Mayer street photography in Encarsh, and it was this sort of, as I say, this eclectic mix of books that I saw in your case there.
Yeah.
So let's have a look to see what you've done since then. So this is your website. What is the actual URL of the website?
It's shybeephotography.com.
Fantastic. So we can see there your list of commercial work and where it's mixing into your personal work as well. And then you did another project, didn't you, with another creative. Before we move on to the 40s project, do you want to sort of tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so I worked with, after I did the Real Junk Food project, my confidence was boosted, and I thought, you know, what actually really inspires me from a personal point of view is working with survivors of domestic abuse. I come from a background which is quite troubled, believe it or not, and there was a history of domestic abuse in my own background, and I thought, and I always think, how can I flip that and somehow make it positive? How can I learn from that and, you know, and teach others as well? And I came to know through a lady that I met through the Real Junk Food project, who herself is a survivor of domestic abuse, about a project called the Creative Butterfly Project that is based in Bradford. And they work alongside a domestic abuse charity here called Staying Put. and Staying Put has been established here for nearly 20 years. And what they do is they encourage the victim to stay, but the abuser to leave, because you can imagine what an upheaval it is when you're constantly having to move away from the abuser. So they try and do the opposite. And so when I came to know about the Creative Butterfly Project through the Staying Put project, I thought, oh, okay, I've got to know what it is that they're doing. It sounds quite creative, you know, obviously the clues in the title. So there's a lady in the middle, you probably can see the picture there, where there's a lady with red hair who's got her head on the shoulder of another lady with short brown hair. The lady with short brown hair, she's a fine arts teacher, and all the women in this particular collage are survivors of domestic abuse. And she wanted to put some sort of sense to what had happened in all their lives collectively, and she and Staying Put worked alongside each other, and they handpicked women that are very much at an advanced stage in their own recovery. So these are women that have had years and years of therapy and connections, and you know, and moved away from the abuse quite a bit. And she said, you know, for me, art is how you heal. And she said that, she goes, I'm an art teacher myself, might be slightly biased, but for me, let's create something, let's do something from this. So she created a project called the Creative Butterfly Project, and they use art therapy as a form of recovery. And what you're seeing here is me speaking to them. I went and spoke to all the women and said, look, I absolutely won't take a picture if you're not comfortable being in the pictures. I won't, or I just won't do it. It's as simple as that. I you know, it's more important that you feel safe than me do this. And because I was honest with them, they welcomed me and they said, you know, that's fine. And what they do is they meet up maybe twice a week on an evening, and they create things. So at this moment, they were creating calendars, they were creating face masks, and they were doing it in mind just to raise money for the little charity, just to keep them going. So I said, well, let's do an exhibition together. Let's do a collective exhibition, because it's really important from my own personal experience that work is highlighted with projects that are trying to help survivors of domestic abuse. And myself as a photographer, obviously, you know, it's something else I'd like to do. I'd like to document it and have another exhibition. So this was just after the Arts Trail Real Junk Food project closed. I started working with this project over the summer, and then this opened in November 2016 at another Bradford venue. And these are just some examples of some of the women. And you might notice that, you know, they don't look unhappy. They're actually very comfortable around each other. They're laughing. And this is the one thing that I wanted to bring out and say, well, actually, this is thanks to art. And this is thanks to collective mindsets and people sharing the same experiences and saying, we are survivors, we're not victims anymore.
Wow. Well, you've definitely captured that sort of that perception and that reality, which is marvellous. So that really got you, I think, thinking about the Art Council funding, did it? Because that funding is vital, because as you said earlier, we all have to eat somehow. So how did you find engaging with the Art Council?
So, yeah, so with the Art Council, actually, it's a funny story. So we're going to talk about my 40 project now. So can I give them context about the 40 project? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So 40 is what the name of the project is, and it was inspired by me turning 40 in 2018. And what I decided at that point that I wanted to do was actually move up in terms of strata, not just work locally, but I wanted to work with people outside of Yorkshire, and also just to sort of boost my own confidence, because I thought, you know, I can do this. I have got a couple of exhibitions under my belt, and I want my approach to change. I don't want to just focus on doing documentary style things per se. What my interest is actually working in the studio. So I literally spent 2017 researching the work and the images and the influences around 40. And so what I did was, like, in February 2018, this is when I turned 40, I put a call out on social media and in the local press, because I had made contact from that point with them, and said, look, I'm looking for 40 people to document, and I'm going to create an exhibition of 40 people. And to celebrate being 40 in 2018. It was inspired by, there were different influences actually. So first of all, I don't know if any of you have heard of Imogen Cunningham. Have you heard of her?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so when
Ansel Adams' good friend?
Yeah, it's very, very much so. Yeah, absolutely. So her oeuvre is very vast. It's very varied. And when she turned 90, bless her, she lived till 93. But when she turned 90, she documented over 100 nonagenarians, so other people that were turning 90. And I remember when I came across her particular work, I thought, oh, what a great way to celebrate a landmark birthday. That's what I'm going to do. I am going to document 40 people that are turning 40. And then also I had from university learnt about Carl Jung and the archetypes and the collective unconsciousness, and he believed that there were universal mythical type characters, what he called archetypes, that reside within our collective unconsciousness. So for example, Red Riding Hood is an archetype, or the big bad wolf, that kind of thing. And taking the idea of an archetype, maybe I could imbue that in these 40 images in the studio. And also there's other influences, like just iconography that we see on a daily basis, historical stories, fables, ideas, and obviously my own imagination. I thought these are actually going to be very unique and unlike anything anybody's done before, so I call them Shaikatypes.
Fabulous.
And the process was, I will talk to you in a second about the Arts Council, but the process was, I put it out on social media. It was in the local media. People that I hadn't, there were a handful of people that I did know that were my own age that took part in the project, but the majority of the people I did not know. They saw it in the press, people shared it vastly, and they just got in touch and said, this is such a great idea. They were bowled over by the concept and said, can we be part of it, please? And in the end, I ended up shooting 72 people. And you can imagine the agony of having to choose 40 images.
Wow.
40 images to go out of there, and everybody got a gift photo as a thank you. So talking about the Arts Council, so what happened is I shot it in 2018 from say April up until the end of November, and I was invited by the Saitaire Festival, which is different from the Saitaire Arts Trail. So the Arts Trail happens in May. The festival is a huge festival that happens in Saitaire in September, and they said, would you like to open up the festival? And the venue at the time was called the Holding Space, which is part of Saitaire. So it's a huge community space, and they do things like yoga, and they have an amazing vegan cafe, but they have this wonderful, wonderful lobby area where people can sit and come and view other people's work. So they said that, we know that you're working alongside them. Would you like to open up the festival? So I said, yes, please, that would be wonderful. So I opened up the festival 20 of the images, because bearing in mind I was still shooting at this point. So half of the images from the project were chosen. And on the back of that, I thought, oh, actually, I do need to complete the project, and I'm going to be cheeky and ask for some money now. So that's where it came from, and I worked with a bid writer in my local area, and I said, look, based on what you've seen and based on my experience thus far, do you think I could apply for Arts Council funding? And she said, yeah, I don't see why not. So we worked quite extensively together, and then I got the funding, and I'd been told all along, don't be dejected if you don't get it, because it's very rare for established artists to get the money. So if you get it, it's probably unlikely, but if you get it, it'll be a miracle. So a miracle happened. I got the money.
Fantastic.
I got the money, and I completed the project, and then I opened up in February 2018. I had the full 40 on display in the same venue.
Right. What I should mention to people as we go through the images, some of them are quite revealing, aren't they? There is a sort of there is a little warning before one of them, which you will see as we go through them.
Yeah.
There are some fabulous images here, and everybody looks as though they were absolutely engaged with the project with you. Would you say that's the case?
100%, yeah, with everybody.
Yeah. So do you want to talk us through the images as we go through them, Shy, please? Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you. So this is Dr. Amina Ahmed. She's a GP based in Bradford. She's also, I'm friends with her sister, and her sister put her forward and said, I'd like my sister to take part. So this, I don't know, can anybody take a wild guess as to what the story is? I just wanted to open it up, because this is how I've presented it. Does anybody have an idea?
Everybody's muted at the moment.
Oh, they're muted. Oh, okay. Okay, that's fair enough.
If anybody does want to make a comment, unmute themselves, please do.
Okay. Well, Okay, no worries. So, as I said, this is Dr. Amina Ahmed, and her story is when she was about 32, she was pregnant with her second child, and she was very, very unwell. And she kept saying, you know, to her colleagues, I don't feel well. And it's not just the pregnancy. I'm sure it's not the pregnancy. I've been pregnant before. And they were like, oh, you'll be fine. You know, sometimes it's worse the second time down, don't worry. So she went for an ultrasound, and in the fetus, her second boy kicked one of 3 malignant tumors in her abdomen. And she said that, no, this is different. This is not just my baby kicking. There is something wrong here. And I have to say, had she not persisted in having more tests done, I don't think she'd be here today.
Wow.
That's the truth. So it took a GP to lay her foot down on her own health. And what happened is they discovered, you know, very quickly that she had cancer. She had cancer in her womb. And when she found out, she completely broke down, like as you can imagine anybody would.
Yeah.
And I remember when she was relaying the story in her interview, she said, my mum came to me, and my mum basically told me off. And she said, like, stop it. Are you literally going to lie there for the remaining 6 months that you've been given and cry the rest of your life away? Or are you going to get up and actually go and mingle with the people that are here for you now? Wow. And she said, had it not been for the love of my mum and my family, then I wouldn't have been able to kill the cancer. And she said, I killed cancer. So what you're seeing here is, I mean, a lot of people think of Diana the Huntress from Greek mythology when they look at this particular image. So again, an archetype in that sense, a archetype, if you will. And her husband just happened to have bought a bow, an arrow from Turkey. They just happened to have a bow and arrow. So this is how one of these things works. Because I kept saying to her, you know, I keep seeing you killing the cancer, and I almost see you like Diana the Huntress. And she said, oh, my husband's got a bow and arrow. And it's one of those that you have to assemble. So I decided that that's how I was going to depict her, very much a huntress killing the cancer. She's very humble about it now. Obviously, she's recovered fully now. They had to do an emergency cesarean at the time. The baby was only 3 pounds, but he survived. He's very well today. And she said, you know, let it be a lesson that don't let others not your confidence and say that you can't get better. I got better, and I was told I only had 6 months to live. And I just want to say about this image as well, it did actually evoke quite a few different kind of responses. So some people were completely bowled over and said, oh my God, it's so powerful. There's a lady that I'm going to show you from another project who got quite angry about it. And the reason she got angry about it was because she herself was a survivor of cancer, breast cancer, but she had ended up having a double mastectomy. So unlike Amina, who didn't have the scars, if you will, the physical scars, this lady had both her breasts removed. And she said that, you know, when I look at that, it just makes me angry, thinking, why did she go unscathed? I mean, obviously, we don't know that she did. I'm sure she didn't. And then there was another lady whose mum had just passed away from cancer. And she said that, you know, I can't look at it. She goes, it's a beautiful image, but I can't look at it. It just makes me think of my mum. So, you know, it elicits different responses. But I feel perfectly comfortable with the image. I feel that, you know, I shot it, and it's a particular story about a particular person that if it resonates with other people because of their own experiences, well, actually, I think that's a job well done. Yeah.
Did you find that most of the people who were applying, because it was a case of them applying to you, wasn't it? Did most of them apply rather than just to have a nice photograph taken? Did they have a strong story to tell like that?
Everybody had a really strong story. It's funny because, I mean, the process was that people got in touch. I would ring them back, have a phone chat, and then I'd meet up with them either face to face, or if they were quite far, we'd have a Skype interview. And all these were recorded on video on my iPhone, because that's something that we did in 2018. And, you know, you can look at people and there's a tendency, isn't there, to judge people by the way that they look. For me, I am fascinated by people. I really am. Even the dullest people fascinate me. And what fascinates me is the aspect of peeling the onion from a photographer. It's peeling back the layers and thinking, I would love to get to really know you, and actually getting to the truth of that person. Yes, and this is where this comes from. And when people spoke to me, some of the stories would just make your toes curl. others were probably somewhat generic, but there was always something there, whether it's a tragedy or a joy or a moment that marked their life, that I thought, you know what, you deserve to be here just like everybody else. So, but, you know, a lot of people were apologizing for saying, if you're even getting in touch.
Yep.
And why are you apologizing, you know? And I talk about some of the experiences about shooting itself. So, you know, Cartier-Bresson talks about the decisive moment. I talk about the defining moment. And for me, the defining moment is where that person is completely yours. They trust you implicitly and you trust them, that bond is there. And for me, it's very much about elevating them from ordinary to extraordinary. And that is what the defining moment is. It's where you feel as a photographer that you've peeled back the layer sufficiently and this is as good as it's going to get. Let's snap it. Let's just snap it and share it.
That's amazing. So let's move on to the next photograph. And this is where there is a little bit of a warning, because this is quite sort of, in your face, it's a beautiful portrait. Let's move on to it. So this is the lady that you were just referring to.
Yeah, so this is the following project that I did, but I will refer back to this lady, absolutely. So this is part of my next project called Body Talk, which I'll talk a bit to you about momentarily. This is Wendy, guys. This is Wendy. And Wendy was a lady who got quite upset and said, you know, why did she survive? Why did I have to get my breast removed? And then when she saw this image, because I shared it on social media, obviously everybody gives me their permission to do that. She says, thank you, actually, thank you. And now I can put it to rest. And so I thought, well, if I've done nothing else in my life, I've given her hopefully something positive from her experience.
Marvelous use of photography, isn't it? And,
yeah.
And this is from that same project, is it? Or?
Again, from 40, yeah. So Sonia is a midwife, and the child is her third child. She had two children already, two girls that were teenagers, and then she met her current partner and decided to have a baby together. And the baby, Sonny, his name is, was 6 months at that point when this photo was taken. And she's very much an advocate, as you can probably tell, of breastfeeding in public. And she says the amount of women that have come to her, and she obviously visits women's home, that have said that, you know, we've been chastised for breastfeeding our children in public, has been ridiculous. And she said that to the point they were actually abused, and said, well, actually, you know, you shouldn't be doing that in public. So I said to her, oh, is that what they said? Right, okay, well, we're going to do exactly the opposite. You love your body, you're an advocate, let's share this advocacy of public breastfeeding. Wow. So she completely stripped naked, and there are a few images where some of the clients were completely comfortable with doing that. And I have to say there were a couple that actually volunteered to strip naked. Now there's something about turning 40, which I imagine is different from turning 60 or being 20, or you know, where you basically you don't really care. you stop caring, bless them. you don't bow to peer pressure, basically. So when we decided upon the concept, when I explained what I was going to do, she said that, you know, yeah, I'm up for that. And I mean, her daughters, I have to say, were absolutely mortified when they saw the image, but they've grown to really like the image.
I don't think we'll be trying it to these Midlands meetings when we go back, so feel safe, everybody, feel safe. These three images here, I think we might recognise the person in the middle. So is that your selfie?
It is, yeah, absolutely. So I'll just talk you really briefly. So the chap on the left, that was Abdul, and Abdul is a businessman. He's from Leeds, and he said that, you know, he's very proud of his Islamic faith, and he said that, you know, and he had so much pride when he talked about it, and he said that, you know, why don't we all just respect each other? Why don't we all love each other? I have friends that are Christian, that are Jewish, that are Hindu, that are Muslim, and also non-faith, and I remember him saying there is such at the moment at that time there was a rise in Islamophobia, and he said that, but I love my religion, and, you know, I don't feel any shame in saying that. And I said, well, you shouldn't be ashamed. You know, it's, you know, I've worked with people that have a Christian faith in the same project that wanted to imbue their love of their own Christian faith. So I said, there's no reason why we shouldn't share that. So we actually got a Quran, a holy Quran, and he dressed in a business suit to show the fact that he's a businessman. And he just wanted to show his love and his faith. So that's the story about Abdul. And then the lady on the far right. So I actually went to school with this lady.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, but I didn't see her for years. I hadn't seen her since we were 18. And the funny story, so she actually picked on me at school. I might have deserved it, to be honest with you, because I was a bit of a people pleaser at the time. But she picked on me. So when she came and she saw me, she was recommended by my accountant. She's a friend of my accountant. I didn't know that they knew each other. And when she saw me, she's like, Shy, and I was like, I don't know who are you, kind of thing. I don't know who you are. And she said, we went to school together. And when we did the interview, I remember thinking she's a little bit hesitant as to say, you know, am I doing the right thing? Will Shy be able to pull it off? And then when we came up with the concept, when I came up with the concept, she was like, wow, that's really quite fantastic. And her story was, at that moment in 2018, she was in the middle of a divorce. And one of the things that she said was that, you know, I wish I hadn't bowed into pressure. She's the oldest of 4 daughters. And when she turned 26, her parents were like, you know, come on now, you're 26. You know, time's are ticking, really. You need to get married. So she had an arranged marriage. And it was an unhappy marriage, she told me. And in 2018, she sort of said to her parents, she had 2 kids with her husband. She said, well, you know, enough's enough. My happiness matters more to me than being stuck in this marriage. And she said it was quite brave because, you know, I was always the golden child in their eyes, and they at first, you know, they weren't happy about it, but she just sort of put a foot down and said, well, actually, it's my life. I'm turning 40, and you know, I've had 2 kids. I've done what you asked me to do. I'm going to get divorced. So this is very much a moment of liberation for her. So I said to her, let's wrap you in, you know, like the bows that you can get for weddings, let's say marriage or husband and wife. I will order one of those, and then we'll wrap you in that, and then I will get a pair of scissors, and you'll wear a pair of handcuffs, and we'll get you cutting yourself free. And her favourite colour is green, so she wore a favourite green top. And also in Indian culture, they wear the bindi on their forehead to indicate that woman is married. So she says, you know, that's where I am at the moment, so I don't mind wearing that. But it's very much a moment of liberation for her. She's cutting herself free at that point.
I suppose one of the dangers of a project like this, where you've got over, did you say 72 people come along, and you were looking for a selection of 40? One of the dangers is repetition. So were you designing the photographs based on the conversations that you were having with people? Yeah,
absolutely. And for that reason, there would never be repetition, because everybody's stories are completely different. Everybody's lives are completely different. So, I mean, it was me that came up with the concept. So when we had the interview, while I would ask them 40 questions to keep in line, keeping the theme being 40, so 40 questions.
Wow.
So the questions might be, you know, if you were a superhero, what would your super skill be? Or what's your favourite colour? If you could go back and speak to yourself when you were 15 years old, what advice would you give? And from that, and this is the way my brain works, while they were talking, while they were responding, automatically the visual would come in my head. And because I have worked in studios for many, many years, it's almost interlinked. So I knew that if it was coming in my head and I was thinking the studio context, it would work. 9 out of 10 times it would work. And I just knew that. From my experience. So when the 40 questions were finished, I would sit back and say, "We've got any questions?" And then I'd explain the concept to them straight immediately after. And they would walk away a bit like, you know, the birds were sort of flying around their heads. You know, the heads were spinning, and then I'd put them in and then shoot it. So it's pretty seamless, really, and pretty painless. I mean, everybody, I can only tell you, everybody's stories are completely different. There's never ever going to be a chance of repetition, ever, because we're not the same.
And I guess yours is, I think we're all wondering what superhero your portrait is based on.
Mine is exhibition.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So yeah, so the middle one, obviously you can see it was myself. I shot this just a week shy of turning 41, so I was just 40 still when I shot this.
Right.
I mean, as I've explained some of the history behind my own background, you know, I had quite a troubled background when I was growing up. There was unfortunately a lot of domestic violence. But I remember when I was shooting this, I remember thinking how far I've come, and
Brilliant.
how I don't look backwards, I only look forwards. And I almost felt like a bit of a warrior. And so I decided what I was going to do is I was going to paint the streaks that you might find on an Amazonian warrior or a tribal warrior.
Yep.
And I wanted to put the mask on because the mask, I am still the photographer behind the camera, and that is where I feel comfortable. So I'm not going to show you everything, but I feel like, and by doing that, I'm looking forward. I'm not doing that. I'm looking backwards, I'm looking forward. My focus is straight forward, and that's very much where I was at that point.
Wow, that's fantastic. What a description. So let's move on to our next portrait.
Okay, so this wonderful lady, she has ME, which has got so bad it's actually she's almost paralyzed. Not MS, it's ME. So it affects all her nerves. She breaks out in rashes. So it's she's likened it to somebody twisting your nerves inside your body, so you can't see it, but that's how it feels on a daily basis.
Right.
And so she's in a permanent wheelchair. She's in a wheelchair. And I actually did the interview, and I actually shot this in her house because my apartment at that time, as you've seen, wasn't accessible. It wasn't accessible for a wheelchair. So I set up the backdrop in her house, so full backdrop. And the story behind her is when we were having a conversation, she's very creative. She's very much into writing, just little jewelry making business, and she's very proud of ethnicity. So she's West Indian, but she has a nod or some sort of link to Africa as well, somewhere in her heritage. And one of the questions I ask is, you know, what's your favorite color? And she says, oh, I'm the purple queen. I'm the purple queen. So I was like, oh, okay. So I remember when I got to the end of it, I said, you're not just a queen. So you're not just a purple queen, you're a queen. So what I'm going to do is use your wheelchair. That's going to be your throne. We are going to dress you up in your finest garbs, in your traditional dress. And she talked about a walking stick in the interview that was her grandfather's that she still has. And I said, that's going to be your staff. So I could put you on the throne with a staff. That would be your staff. And the headdress, so that particular headdress is a nod to her heritage. So there are different kinds of headdresses that they do to particular types of cultures. And she says, that's particular to my culture. And I said, well, that's going to be your crown. And so you, my friend, are a queen. And so she had nods of her own jewelry that she included. And she wore all purple. So that's the story from that.
They're sort of kind of semiotic laden images, really, aren't they?
Yeah,
lots and lots
absolutely.
of signs to different stories.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Let's move on to this one here. So we've now got two people in the photograph.
We do. So these are husband and wife. This is Chris and Lucy. So funny story about this. So Lucy got in touch with me first. We had the interview, and she obviously made a nod to Chris, and she said, "Oh, my husband." So they're both teachers, and Lucy sort of made a nod to her husband and said that he's now he looks after the kids. He doesn't do contracted work. He's a supply teacher now. And so I said, "Oh, why is that? Is that a choice that you made? That's you know, that's pretty cool." And she said it's just the way that it happened. There were issues around his mental health. So that was the first indication that I got around this. And then, funnily enough, and she basically said that, you know, we are very much a support mechanism, and our marriage was tested in the sense, you know, you think, is it really about, you know, sickness and health for richer and poorer? And she says the support that I've given him and the support that we've given each other and with our kids, it has propelled us through a really difficult time. So even then, I didn't understand what the crux of the mental health issues were. And then a couple of days later, I got an email from her husband. I didn't know it was her husband. He just said that, "Oh, I'd love to be part of your 40 project. I've seen it in the paper. I live very close by. Would you be able to come and interview me?" So I went and interviewed him, and then he just sort of mentioned the fact that he was Lucy's husband. And I was like, "Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Oh, okay, that's cool." And then when he started telling me about his story, so his story is that he was 2 years into a mental nervous breakdown, bless him. It'd come completely out of the blue. there was no indication that it would happen. There's no history of it in his family. You know, he was a keen rugby player, devoted father, devoted husband, and he had a mental breakdown. That's the only way to put it. And it completely threw him and his family, both the respective families, the children. And he said, and I remember saying to him, well, how do you feel now? Are you okay? Are you all right to carry this interview? And he said, I look at my children and I think, you know, I'm healing. I feel like I'm healing through them and through my wife. So I'd seen an image very similar that Robert Mapplethorpe, a really famous photographer, again, who works in the studio, had created, where he had wrapped a couple, two men in white mesh.
Right.
And I remember thinking, okay, there's something really interesting about what you're saying about healing. So I said to them, how about we do a portrait shot of you two together, because you're the only couple that I'm working with. So I think that's quite poignant. But also, let's wrap you in bandages. Let's wrap you in bandages. I showed them the image from Robert Mapplethorpe, and I said, the bandages will indicate the healing, but the fact that you're holding each other is you are holding each other. It's not that, you know, Chris is holding you or Lucy's holding you. It's about a symbiotic, very much a collaboration and a unity. And they loved the idea, so that's what we did. We shot them like that.
Fabulous. Daniel Meadows, the photographer who created the photo bus in the 70s, the photo bus project, where he did actually drive a Barton's bus about the country, calls the camera a passport into people's lives, and that's certainly what you might have been experiencing. Would you say that was the case?
I think yeah, 100%, yeah. There were influences from so many things.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, does it remind you of anything, Stuart?
Yes, something does spring to mind. Yeah. So this
Okay.
is based on a piece of art, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a nod. There's a nod to the famous Vermeer painting, the girl with the pearl earring. I'm sure most of you are familiar. So this is Saima. So Saima is British Asian. She's of Pakistani heritage, but she's unusually fair. She's very, very fair, and she one of the things that we talked about in her interview, she wears a headscarf, and she says that, you know, why are people talking about a headscarf and wanting to ban the headscarf? She goes, I don't understand it, because women from, you know, millennia have worn headscarves. Nuns still wear headscarves. Men have worn it. You know, Greek Orthodox priests wear it. So why is it such a big deal now? You know, it's a pride. I would never have a go at them for being proud of their culture and their history. So I don't understand why so many people are wanting to talk about banning the headscarf. So I said, you know, it's absolutely right. And I showed her a picture of the Vermeer painting, and she said, when was this when was this painted? I said, I'm sure it was something like the 16th to 17th century. So she looked at me and she said, are you telling me from 400 years ago, this chap from the Netherlands, painted this, and there's a lady there with a headscarf, and yeah, now people are talking about women shouldn't from Islamic faith shouldn't be able to wear headscarves, and said, yeah, and she says, well, stop that. Basically. That's not right. She goes, I don't understand why it's such a big deal. So I said I totally agree with you, and because she's unusually fair, so she comes from a part of Pakistan where the women there are very fair, they're quite light-eyed. I said to her, and I said, I bet you anything, when I shoot you, people will wonder what heritage you are. It shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter. It should be your choice. But let's see if they can guess, just out of interest. And also, it's a nod to the love of your religion, a nod to your love of your faith and your culture. So I shot her very much with in that particular kind of lighting. So I set it up particularly for her. You can see she's wearing an earring, but it's quite ethnically, I would call it quite an ethnic style. It has got a pearl in it. So again, that's a nod to her own particular heritage. And we shot it in the colours of the girl with the pearl earring. And so this is very much her saying that, you know, I'm very proud of wearing a headscarf. I'm very proud of being British, but also of my Muslim faith. And let's work with this. Let's get people talking. And it did. This actually sold quite a few prints.
There is a marvellous book which I know one of our group this afternoon has got on his bookcase. Maybe he'll find it for the end and show it to us. I think it's called Inspired by Art. This is where images, artwork like this has then been used, and very famous photographers such as Martin Parr and Rankin have been inspired by that art and shot a homage to it, really.
Really?
Which
Really?
is very, very interesting.
I'd be interested to see that.
So, is this mother and son, is it? Or?
It is. It's mother and son. So this is my dear friend Stefania. So Stefania's Italian. She's Sardinian, to be more exact. And I'm good at, so one of my close friends here in Shipley in Saitaire is called Juliana, and she's of Sardinian heritage, and I've stayed with her family in Sardinia. I went there in 2017, and Stefania and I were the same age. She doesn't speak any English, so my Italian was tested. Thankfully, like I said, I'd lived there a while ago, so I could just about scrape by. And we just bonded. We got to know each other. So Stefania's story is, I mean, as you can imagine, in Italian culture, in the Mediterranean culture, it's very much a sense of family. Everything centers around the family. Life, work, dinners center around the family. And this is her son Davide, and so when she came and had this picture shot, she traveled to England. She just had a miscarriage. She just had a second miscarriage. So her relationship with her only son was very, very marked at that point. She was, you know, she loved her child even more, and he was as precious to her. So when we were talking in her interview, she said that, you know, the most proudest moment in my life is the year 2010 when I gave birth to my son Davide. Everything changed after that. My life is about him, and it really is, because I mean, I stayed with her and her family, and it centered around him. Her work centered around him, and I thought, isn't this nice? And it's quite, and in some ways, it's quite different to British culture. So, I mean, obviously, we do love our kids, we love our families, and all the rest of it. But we're okay with not seeing them as frequently. Whereas in Italy, you pretty much saw them every day. You know, even if you didn't live together, you'd see them in the evening, or you'd pop by. It was always like that, certainly in Sardinia. Wow. So when she came over, I said to, you know, not to sort of stress too much a stereotype, but you really do remind me of the Madonna and Child. Right. And she went, oh, thank you. She went, grazie. And I said to her, how about we shoot you like Madonna and Child? So what you're seeing here is she's wearing, this is very much an outfit that's typical of Sardinian women. They would wear all black, and they still, some of them still cover their head out of respect, certainly the older women, the older generation. The jewellery she's wearing is actually Sardinian gold as well. So the ring she's got on, the necklace that you can sort of see partly. I said to her, let your son just be dressed in white. I want it to create that, I want the focus just to be on you, so we'll have a nod to your heritage, but it's about you. And to me, they also look quite similar. I think mother and son look quite similar. So when they look back at this picture, they'll think, you know, because he will change, obviously. I just remember thinking at the time, let's do the Madonna and Child. I think it's worked quite well as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting image, in as much that if we look at the hands here,
yeah,
potentially as a commercial photographer,
yeah,
you might not pose hands like that, might you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're quite big, aren't they? Whereas here, where you're telling this story about the mother and the child, it becomes a vital part of the story. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, for me, it was really important because where she was at that point in her time, just having had a miscarriage, she was told she wouldn't be able to have children anyway because she had a cancer that they call early stage, and then obviously she got pregnant with Davide. She had him, and losing the baby at the age of 40. You know, she kept saying that the fact that I conceived in the first place. And then I miscarried, she says, was somewhat of a miracle anyway. But she said, it really makes me realise just how important and precious life is. So I'm going to spend every single minute around him. If he moves, I'm going to move with him. If he gets married, I'm going with him. I was like, oh my God. I was joking, yeah. But everything for me works really, all the components come together really well.
Yeah. At the same Saitaire weekend, I met somebody called Carolyn Mendelsohn, who I know you know. Mm-hmm. She had her exhibition called In-Betweeners. And I said to her at the time, have you ever thought about the Royal Photographic Society? She said no. And the following year, she won the gold medal in the IPE competition. Have you considered entering any of these into the IPE? Or
I haven't. I mean, it would. I don't have time. That's the truth. I'm constantly, if I'm not working, I'm researching, and then I like to have a life somewhat. I have somewhat of a semblance of a life in between.
Okay, well, you've got your images, and they will be launching the. I lose track of the numbers. I think it's 163 or something.
Yeah.
So it would take you at least 10 minutes to upload them to the website. So I'm just gonna leave you with that thought.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So let's move on. So we've got a bit of a sign in this one.
We do. So this is Michelle, guys. So Michelle, when she came in, she had an almost, I would want to call it cockiness when she came in. And I didn't know why. And again, I like to peel that onion because I always think there's a reason behind why, you know, the psychology behind the way that people approach strangers. So when we got talking, we had a cup of tea, we were chatting, and one of the questions I said to her was, what's the most memorable moment in your life? And she said, well, I can't really tell you what the most memorable moment in my life is. And I said, oh, okay. And she says, but I can tell you that I'm known for suffering from anxiety. And I said, oh, okay. She said, and they said, does that stem from anything? And almost in a throwaway remark, she said, well, it started when I was 12. And she goes, and my dad died when he was 12. And in fact, he committed suicide. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I just let her speak. And so I remember thinking, wow, if you have come with the cockiness, I absolutely forgive you. It's fine. You can be as cocky as you want because you've gone through all that. When I explained the idea to her, what I said to her, one of the most important things about anxiety is you can curb it, you can control it. But the most important thing is that you can let it go. And she burst into tears. And she said, that's mad. And she said, the letting it go is really important. I'm sorry, I'm crying. And it's one of those experiences that extend beyond photography for me. It was, I always remember the date, it was November the 5th. When she started crying, fireworks started going off in the background. Not because she was crying, but because it just happened to be November the 5th. It was a bonfire night. And it was almost like there was a moment of revelation. She said, I can let it go, can't I? I can let it go. And I said, yes, you can. And I said, this is how I want to shoot you. I want to portray that the fact that you're letting this anxiety go and it's really important for you. And out of everybody, I would say the project in itself had the most impact on her. When she came to the launch of the final 40, she came with her partner and she came with her 16-year-old daughter. And in the evening, she was crying throughout. We had a video presentation where I showed excerpts of some of the interviews, including hers. And after that presentation, she came up to me. She was in tears, and she said that, I know I've sent you text messages, and I know I've sent, I've emailed you to say that it's had a massive impact. She goes, I can't tell you from the bottom of my heart how much I thank you for letting me be part of this project. It's changed my life. And so she went, and then when she was out of earshot, her 16-year-old daughter approached me, and her 16-year-old daughter said, she goes, I've heard what my mum said to you. And she goes, can I tell you, on that night when she came to your interview, she dropped me off to dance class. And when she came to pick me up, she goes, it was like another person. She goes, she was floating on cloud 9. Wow. And she hasn't come down off cloud 9 since. She said, we used to bicker. We don't bicker anymore. And she says also she's had CBT therapy, which I knew. She goes, she's had it twice and it's never worked. Whatever happened in that interview, it completely changed her perspective, and it has. And so this is the power of photography.
It's amazing. It goes back to that butterfly project that you referred to earlier on, didn't it? So wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, wow.
So,
moving on
swiftly. Yeah. So after that, after a really successful launch, I decided I was going to take the summer off of 2019 because I thought I deserved it.
Well done.
So I did. But during the summer, I did apply. I decided already in my head that I was going to do the project. And at that point, what had happened is, some of the pictures that Stuart showed you of where he captured me showed me a much heavier state than what I am now. So I had been heavy pretty much my adult life. So the picture that he showed me actually 4 stone heavier than what I am now. So over the summer, I had this really relaxing summer last year, and I decided I was going to lose weight. And I thought, if I'm not doing it for, I'm in my 40s now, I'm doing it for me. I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy. So I actually started losing the weight quite quickly. But my response to losing the weight was actually quite emotional. So actually the opposite of what you would expect. So rather than be happy about it, I actually got quite upset about it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the truth. And I actually, to the point I went to see my GP, and I was sort of blubbering, you know, so I don't know why I'm getting upset.
Where is it? I can't find it.
I don't understand it, what's wrong with me, you know, that kind of thing. And she sort of sat me down. She said, look, I've looked through your history, and obviously, you know, with the difficult childhood you had and all the issues that you had, I used to have an eating disorder. She goes, I'm not surprised that that's where your headspace is. And she goes, you're finally tackling the demon, you're tackling the devil, and you're winning. And it's not in a place that you've ever been before. And also, one of the things I realized about the weight was it was a security blanket for me for such a long time. And losing that, I felt vulnerable. I felt really, really vulnerable. Yeah, and you know, and I sort of went away and I sort of sniffled a bit, and I thought, this is silly now. You know, this is better for me. Why am I getting upset? So I did. I lost 4 stone in weight, and I spoke to a few friends about it. And one of the ladies that I spoke to about it was a poet that I know that's called, her name is Sharina Lee Satie, and she's very much an up-and-coming, fairly well-established poet in Bradford. And she herself has had massive issues around body image. So if you look at her, she's the most beautiful looking thing. She's a mum with 3 daughters. But again, because of her background, she's mixed race. So she's half Indian, quarter Pakistani, quarter English. She was picked on at school because of being mixed race, something that she can't help and something that she shouldn't have to apologise for. And the influences, unfortunately, she grew up with, like, so her mum probably wasn't the best protector of the family, from what she's told me. So she shared a bedroom with her sister, and when she was 14 years old, she woke up and found her 15-year-old sister having sex with a random stranger next to her at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Wow.
It made her, it traumatized her. It really traumatized her, and it made her question her own body. And she said at that point on, I wanted to protect my body. I don't want to be in this space where I'm having to expose myself. And when she speaks, she's quite timid, but when she's on stage, she's really quite powerful. So I said to her, how about we do something together? This is really important. You know, I'm having these own issues with me losing weight, of all things, and you're telling me that, you know, you even now have massive issues around your own body image. Let's do something together. Let's celebrate our bodies. And she said, okay, I'm up for that. So at that point I said, look, I'm going to apply for a second pot of Arts Council funding. I'll do it anyway, to be honest with you. I'd do it regardless of whether I get the funding. And I was told at that point it's very unlikely I'd get it a second time, but I got the funding a second time.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you. I got the funding. And then I said to her, right, this is happening. So what I did was I put a call out to women. The project was called Body Talk. And I put a call out to women from 18 years upwards, including trans women if they wanted to take part, non-binary women. And I said that, you know, submit 3 words as to why you love your bodies. That's it. I just want 3 words, and then you can take part. And I said initially, I'm going to shoot 52 women because there are 52 weeks in a year, and we are body positive all year round, or we should be body positive. But in the end, I ended up shooting 58, and I didn't leave anybody out this time because it's just too important a topic to exclude anybody. And so took the whole summer off, and then in October, the whole of October I shot. So the way that I work is I'm very, very organized. I work smarter, not harder. So I will work 12-hour days or 10-hour days, have a day off, and then do the same the following day. So, but it means I'm doing more or less the same work in a short time frame, so the rest of the time is free. And yeah, so 52 women, I shot them, and I chose a yellow background because a yellow for me, it signifies and imbues a positivity and sunshine and sunflowers and that kind of thing. Fantastic. And when I spoke to the women on the phone, I said, the only thing that I want you to think about is come in, imagine that you're walking in a field of flowers and you are at your most optimum in life. You're most in love you've ever been, financially most comfortable, the happiest and the most body positive. And I want you to wear what you'd wear in this field of flowers. So imagine it as a circle of protection. And I want you to come in wearing that particular outfit, and we're going to shoot you a yellow backdrop. and I shot them in 3 different ways. So what I did in the first instance was I created a list of nouns and adjectives from A to Z, and I threw the words at them. So for example, the first word was archer for A, B was bowler. So obviously you're already thinking about how you can change their body positions, and realizing these aren't models, these are normal women that some have never stepped foot in a studio before. So you have to, as a photographer, think about how you can immerse them in a fun way, but get the sense of movement that you want on that backdrop. So that's what I did. The second scenario was I used one of the words that the women had submitted, and I shot a portrait of them holding that particular word up. And then the third was just a very striking portrait. And what I said was, imagine that the bottom half of your feet, your body is rooted into the ground like a tree trunk, so you can't move that. So that means that you can only move your arms. And I want you to now change. And I said, I'm going to throw the words that you've submitted at you again, and I want you to give me your interpretation of those words. So in this particular example, you can see Ellie. So Ellie, I met, she was a massive fan of the 40 project, and we hooked up. So I mean, it's funny, you know, again, you think about, you look at somebody, she looks so confident. Ellie, sorry, she's actually a senior lecturer in psychology, believe it or not, at Bradford University. When she came on the launch night of the 40 project in February, we just talked afterwards. She kept saying, oh, I'm in love with your work, I'm in love with you, let's just talk, let's meet, there's so much that we could do. So I've actually gone and lectured with at the psychology department, because there's a big link between art and science, I think.
Yes, fabulous.
And she wanted to take part in this project. She said that, you know, I have my own very personal reasons. I know people think I'm very confident. She goes, I'm not, I'm marshmallow.
Right.
I am marshmallow. I want to take part in your project, and I think it's very celebrating women. I think it's really important that we do that. And she kept saying, and I said that, oh, these shots are fantastic that are coming out. She goes, really? She goes, I don't think I'm doing anything. I said, you are. And so when we used the final scenario, I said, right, okay, strong, that's the word, show me strong. And she just automatically did this, and I shot her. And
it works, and it works, doesn't it? It really does work.
Okay, so yeah, we have Wendy. So one of the women that I knew through this project, she's a tattoo artist, and she's one of the first in the country that work with women that have had breast cancer, and she's known as a nipple tattoo artist. Her name's Lucy. You'll see her in a few moments. And she sent out the call out that I sent out to the group that she was working with, who were having nipple tattoos done by her. So some had them as nipples, and others had them as different tattoos. And this lady, I mean, she's remarkable. She's a biker. She's 6'3". She looks quite intimidating, but she's one of the sweetest people you've ever met. And she said, when people look at me, they don't realise what I've put my body's been through. And she goes, I feel like less of a woman. She was so nervous as well when she came and had her photo shoot. She'd never stepped foot in a studio before. And she says that, you know, I feel like I'm going to cry. And I said, if you want to cry, that's absolutely fine. That's not a problem. I have alcohol if you want alcohol. Got tea, you know, I don't think we'll need it, but it's up to you. And I said, I just want you to be you. If you trust me, I promise you, I will do you justice. I'll do you justice. And in the end, she said to me, I want people to see the scar, or I want to see what's on there. And I said, are you absolutely sure? Because once it's out there, it's out there. She goes, 100%. You've made this experience so enjoyable and so seamless. I trust you. I know you're doing it for the right reason. So we shot her with her scar, and it's like a zipper. So the zipper is, you know, you can see the butterflies flying out. Yeah, so that's Wendy.
Wow.
Oh yes, this is my queen. This is my queen, Gombo. She's a very good friend of mine. So Gombo is, she's a very bohemian type of character. She's a single mum of 2 now, but she just laughs and smiles all the time. She is of African heritage, speaks very, very, it's like Queen's English almost. She speaks very clear English because she's born in England, but she's a lover and just a massive love for her heritage. So she goes like to Gambia all the time, every year. And I said to her, you know, what do you think we could do? You know, so using some of the words that you submitted. So hers were like powerful, evolving. She goes, I feel like I'm constantly changing. I'm changing. And I said to her, well, let's how about we make a nod to the tribe that you come from? So she has a tribe. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it. And I said, let's just create some face paint from that, and then have you wearing the traditional headgarb. And she says, yeah, but she goes, I don't want to be naked, but I don't want to be covered. She goes, you know me, Shy, I don't like clothes. And I said, I didn't know that, but thanks for sharing that with me. But you know, we could do whatever. It's up to you. If you want to be naked, you can be naked. It's not mandatory. It's not how I normally shoot, but it's fine. So as a compromise, she says, this is what I wear at home. This is, you know, I wear at home around my kids. I'm quite comfortable with my body. And she says, in Africa, you know, if you're plump, you're considered wealthy, you're considered healthy. And she goes, it's funny when my aunties come and visit me, they say that, you know, the women here are so thin.
Marvelous story.
So, yeah. Oh, so this is Lucy. So remember mentioning the tattoo artist. So Lucy, her story is she has a debilitating illness. She's on crutches. So she's only in her 20s. She's on crutches at the moment. She's started to lose weight, which helps it to some extent. But she says that when people look at me, they think I'm some, you know, ladette, some gobby, you know, drunk ladette, and she's not. She's a mum of one. She's, you know, she's not like that. She's the sweetest person ever. And I said to her, isn't it funny when people look at you, they perceive you one way, and actually the complete opposite. And you know, shame on us if we do that. And I said, but it happens all the time. And I said that, you know, let's own your tattoos. You're one of the few models that look like you anyway. Why would we try and hide it? So she came with her pink hair, and she's got piercings everywhere. She came with tattoos, and on her knuckles it says "Boss Lady." And I said that's how we're going to show that you are the boss. And I think one of her tattoos says "Every cloud has a silver lining." And I said, let's show that.
Yeah. That's marvelous.
Thank you.
Marvelous. So since that time when you walked into Saitaire and gave that beautiful smile and laugh at the book, you've had quite a journey, and it's nice to see that you're still laughing in the same way. So what are you going to be doing moving on from here?
So I have 2 projects in the pipeline. I think that I am very much interested in working in the studio from now on, and portraiture particularly appeals to me. People interest me, and so I think, so I've already put a bid in for my next project for the Arts Council. I'd do it anyway, regardless, to be honest with you. It's called Women in Uniform. So one of the things that I noticed that actually infuriated me was from doing the 40 and the Body Talk project was these projects were open to everybody. So literally everybody. So anybody could apply from whatever the background was. And I remarked that, I said, why are there so few people of colour, women of colour, men of colour taking part? Why is it that there's always a handful? Why is it when I go to an exhibition there's always a handful? It's fantastic, anybody comes, don't get me wrong, but why is it I exist? So I know that people like me exist. Why are people like us not coming forward? So I conceived the concept of the project. It's called Women in Uniform, and it's going to focus on women of colour who are particularly successful in industries that are traditionally underrepresented by women like them. So they could be, you know, surgeons, it could be astronauts, it could be bakers, it could be mechanics, things like that. And I'll be putting a call out next year. I'll be working with a venue outside of Yorkshire, so it's very much about me moving outside of Yorkshire now. I very much want to expand my own horizons, because I am pretty well established here, and you know, it's the world is your oyster. Why would I limit myself to just Bradford and to West Yorkshire anyway? Wow,
that's incredible, isn't it? Well, Shy, it's been absolutely marvellous hearing about your journey, really, and about the projects. Thank you ever so much. What I'd like to do now is just unmute everybody, and if anybody's got any questions, now's the time to be asking them. So let me try and unmute everybody. So there we go. A question, please. Anybody got any questions for Shy?
Yes.
I did it at our church as well, didn't I, for a time?
Okay, John, you put your hand up. John?
32 children at one time, Sunday school.
And is
Me and
somebody else
Ethel did it, and then me and Pat and Janet Ison did it.
Okay.
Hi, John. Hi, sorry, I'm just getting some feedback from somewhere else.
What I'm going to do is just mute everybody again, and we'll do it one at a time, I think. So I think I'm just going to mute everybody so that we can hear John's
I
question.
told you, didn't I, that Jim and
So where is John? Let me. So
Me?
John, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to know how much post-editing was done in your photos. Right, Shy. How much post-editing?
Whoop, hang on a second. I've not unmuted Shy yet. Sorry. Must get a good technician. You can't get staff, can you?
Hi, it's fine. So very little post editing was done for both projects, the Body Talk and the 40 project. I am a photographer. I'm a studio photographer. That's where my expertise lies. So I very much believe that you should utilize the skills that you've already got. So it's my own use and knowledge of lighting and skills and the apparatus side around me. So very little was actually done.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Excellent.
Good to hear.
Fantastic. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Romney, are you with us, Romney?
Hello, Stuart. Yes, I am.
Hello, Romney. Now, Romney, he runs the RPS Contemporary group, and I just wondered what your view of Shy's projects were.
Well, I was really impressed about the way in which your creative imagination helps the sitters to sort of present themselves in highly imaginative and interesting ways, sort of immediately creating a narrative about themselves just from the way they look and dress and pose and so on.
Yeah.
How difficult a process and how collaborative a process with them is that? How does it work? What sort of conversation? I'd be really interested to know what sort of conversation you have with people to kind of, end up with images that look like this.
So the processes for, thank you first of all, the processes for both projects were somewhat different. So for the 40 project, I spoke to them on the phone for about 10 minutes and said, I'm going to interview you and I'm going to record the interview and I'm going to ask you a set of 40 questions. And then from that, I'll be able to glean the idea of how I want to shoot you. So that's exactly what I did. And at the end, the idea is just there. There's no other way to explain it. It's just in my head and I know it's going to work. I sit and discuss it with them. Now, there were only a couple of times when a couple of the participants said, actually, I don't know if I'm that comfortable with doing it that way for very particular reasons. And I said, well, we could tweak it and do it this way instead. And so we did. And that's how we shot it. So I would say ultimately it's not as collaborative as it probably could be, but it doesn't need to be. I think they trust me, but I will of course listen to them and respond to what they're saying, what feedback they're giving back to me so that they feel comfortable. And I've always said the reason that people come to me and work with me and I've become known as a studio photographer, a studio portrait photographer, is because I think they trust me. And the reason they trust me is because I say to them, look, it's really important to me that you feel comfortable. It's actually more important to me rather than putting a picture up on the wall that you feel safe. If you don't, then we will just stop it now and it's fine, we'll walk away, we'll shake hands. So because they know that, they do continue the process with me. So that was the one with 40. So it wasn't particularly collaborative as such, but I think they trusted me. The Body Talk one, so pretty much everybody had the same generic instruction in that you are walking through this field of flowers, coming what you would wear in that scenario and imagine yourself in the most optimum in life. Now, I had to take into account that some people couldn't move as well as others, for example. So some had disabilities, some just weren't as confident. Some had never set foot in a studio scenario before. So I have to work with them. So it's almost like trying to coax it out of them, but gently, and always encouraging them. That wasn't collaborative at all. It was basically me just giving them instruction, but the trust is there. And also I have to say, because I shoot at my home, so the 40 was shot in my last apartment, the Body Talk was shot in my current apartment, because it's a home scenario, I think half the job is already done, because when you walk into a photographer's home, you're already getting a measure of them as a person. So there is a psychology for me behind working from home. When they step into your home scenario, they're also relax in a way that they wouldn't in a sterile clinical studio environment. And then we have a cup of tea and then we just get on with it. And before they know it, 10 minutes have flown by, because that's pretty much how long it takes me, 10 minutes per person. And then we just sit and have a chat and that is done. So it's painless. So that's it. That's how it works.
I'm sorry to spring that on you, Romney. It is something I tend to do. But that was a fabulous question. Shy, looking at, just building on Romney's question just for a moment, if we look at the whole project now, what would you say the narrative of the whole project emerged to be?
Identity.
Yeah. So you're really investigating individual identity within the whole community. Would that make sense?
I think it's more about the individual for me. I always remember, we are so different. And when I was doing the 40, I mean, going back to your question about the repetition, we really are so different. I had two people that had two of the same jobs. They didn't know each other, and they had the same sort of 2.4 children background setup, but their lives were completely opposite. So for me, it is really about peeling back the onion and saying, well, actually, don't, just because that person looks that way, actually, there is so much more. There's so many hidden layers. And also there's the sense of identity there's so many different aspects to that. So there's how I see that person, how they see themselves, which is often quite different from how I see them as a photographer, how their loved ones see them, how their friends see them, how the viewing spectator, how the public audience see them. And it's bringing all this together and saying, actually, everybody's views are valid. You're just as important. It's just how you interpret things, and that's fine. It's okay to see things differently as well.
That's marvellous, thank you. So I think we've probably got time for one more question if anybody's got any questions they need to ask at all, or feel they would like to ask. If anybody wants to unmute themselves, otherwise I'll spring it on to, oh, Robert is holding his hand up. Let me unmute Robert.
Well,
Hello.
I don't know if you were going to spring it on me, but
Hi, Rob.
hello.
See you again.
But Stuart, Shy, you know, where has the last hour and 40 minutes gone? I mean, it was just, that was absolutely fantastic. It really was. Now I'm going to quote you, Shy. It was, for me, one of those experiences that extends beyond photography, and it behoves me to thank you for this. I hope this has been recorded, Stuart, because so many people are going to want to see this. I see 30, 40 people in the room at the moment, but you know, I think the whole world is going to want to see the last hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. Shy, it was fantastic.
Thank you.
I think everybody will agree. How can anybody be so open and honest and sincere and genuine and all those things? It was fantastic, truly fantastic.
Thank you, Robert. I think, did Carolyn, did you have your hand up? And, you want to ask something, Carolyn? No? Okay. And what about Judy? Were you moving your screen? Yeah? Okay. Well, thank you ever so much. And that was a brilliant vote of thanks, Robert. And Shy, thank you ever so much for joining us. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. Fingers crossed it has recorded automatically for us, and I'll be posting that. Yeah, I can see it flashing saying recording. So I will send you a link to the recording if you want to look at it again. I'm just going to unmute everybody, and if you can all thank Shy, that would be absolutely marvellous.
Fantastic.
So can we have a round of applause? We'll give you a few moments, and then a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next meeting is in a couple of weeks' time, and I will send you a link to that meeting. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.